This video is on section 3-6 on constructing parallel and perpendicular lines. So we'll go back to some of the ideas that we used in chapter 1 on constructing congruent angles and segments and bisecting things, and we're now taking those same ideas and constructing with a compass and straight edge a line parallel to a given line through a point, a line perpendicular to a given line through a point, and also so a point on the line, and a line perpendicular to a given line through a point that's not on the line, and that you can explain and justify the process that you're using. All right, so here is a line and a point not on the line, and I want to draw a parallel line through this one, but I need to use my compass and my straight edge. Okay, so the first thing I will do is draw in a transversal. Okay, so think of this line as your transversal. It'll go through the point. Now it can go anywhere on this line. I tend to do it kind of at an angle, so I see it more as a transversal than just a line. Okay, the next thing I will do, I'll make sure that you draw this up higher, so there's some room for an angle up there. Okay, the next thing that you will do is to draw an angle through, put the pointy end on this intersection, and you draw an angle. Okay, you draw the exact same angle up here, so that these are corresponding angles. I hope you see okay? These are corresponding angles, and I'm going to construct these angles to be congruent. So the corresponding angles are congruent, and as we know from the converse of the corresponding angles theorem, that these lines would then be parallel. Okay, notice I measured the length of this arc, and then from this intersection I measured, I marked off that length, and then I will connect this point with that tick mark, and it should be roughly parallel. Okay, maybe off a little bit, like mine's off a little bit, but that's the idea, okay? So I've constructed these two corresponding angles to be congruent, and so by the converse of the corresponding angles postulate, these lines must be parallel. Okay, now here's a diagram that will explain this process, that you first draw in a transversal, okay, and then you draw in the arc, constructing congruent angles, okay, measure off this length and then this length, okay, and this is based on the converse of the corresponding angles postulate. The next one, before I jump into perpendicular lines, let's talk about the perpendicular postulate. Through a point not on the line, there is one and only one line perpendicular to the given line. Okay, again, this is a postulate. It should make sense. Okay, now let's practice doing that. Okay, so here's a line. And we're first going to do a point that's on the line. So here's the line, and I'll pick a point on the line. Doesn't matter where on the line it is. Okay, now the first thing you will do is you will find two other points that are the same distance away. So it doesn't matter how big your compass is, but you'll make a really big arc that goes through both sides of the line. Okay, through both sides, and these points are the same distance away. Now the next thing I have to do is bisect this segment. Okay, so I make my compass a little bit longer than halfway, and draw on the two arcs like we did back in section 1-6. Okay, now if we do this correctly, then this should go through the point that we selected before. And we have a line that's perpendicular to this one that goes through the point. Okay, here's a diagram that says the exact same thing. We draw, now it just does it part way. I drew it all the way around, but you can see how you can do it just 2 tick marks would be sufficient. And then they just do 2 tick marks, but I like to think of it as I'm now bisecting that segment, and so I'll draw on the full arc, but you could get by with just 1 tick mark and then draw it through point P. Okay, the last thing we're talking about is constructing a perpendicular line through to a given line through a point that's not on the line. Okay, again, I will use my compass to construct 2 points that are the same distance away. Okay, so make sure that goes through the line twice. Okay, and then I will bisect this segment. So I make my compass a little more than halfway and draw 2 big arcs. Okay, and then I will draw a line through these 2 intersections. It should also go through that point. And here's a perpendicular line that goes through that point. And here's a diagram that explains it. You have a line, you draw your big arc, and then I bisected the segment. They just drew in one of the tick marks, but that's fine too. Okay, and that's really it. It's those three ideas of constructing a line parallel to a given line through a point, and that's based on the converse of the corresponding angles postulate, a line perpendicular to a given line that you draw an arc and then you bisect that segment that you created, and also constructing a line perpendicular to a given line through a point not on the line. And again, that's also based on bisecting a segment.